Okay, and you have to accept the recording. Amazing. Okay. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to season 4 of the Mom Halo podcast. I'm your host, Alana Kafitz. Welcome to our new studio. We've never done this before. I'm sitting live at a new space. Our friends at the Workplace Collective, my friend Carly Neptune, she is our podcast host sponsor this year. So I will be sitting here in this beautiful space. And Brittnei is our guest this morning. I cannot wait for you to meet this woman. She is so incredible. I've already been blown away by her. And she's a new scholar for 2024. And she's just trailblazing in the world of decluttering, DIY, and design. So let's give Brittnei a big Mom Halo warm welcome. Woo!
Thank
Hi,
you.
Brittnei.
Hello.
How's it going?
It's great. Thanks. Thanks for having me.
I'm so happy to have you. Brittnei, just tell us like from the top who you are, where you're from, what you do. Kick us off. Go ahead.
Sure. So I am a professional organizer and a tamer of chaos. I'm a mom of two and a wife of one, and I am based in Burlington. Um, and yeah, what I do for a living is I help people tame the chaos of everyday life. So we offer decluttering, organization, DIY coaching, and design consulting.
I love that so much. Where did this all start? Take us back to day one.
Well, if you want to go way back, I've just always been that kid
Yes.
who was really impacted by their space. If you were to ask my mom, I'd be the kid who'd be like lining up my books from biggest to smallest, color coding everything. It's just something that's always been really important to me. And then as I grew up, you you ask my university roommates, and I was the one who was tidying at the end of the parties, picking up the empties before going to bed. Um, I would like muscle the couch to the other side of the wall just for a little bit of a change of scenery. Um, and, I think this like the impact that the space has had on the way I can function, my well-being, and just my general happiness in a space has always been a part of that. And then I just started kind of sharing that with others. And so it was always kind of a bit of a side hustle. I've worked in the corporate world the most of my career. And as a side hustle, I would just go into people's homes, transform their spaces, and eventually took the leap and started my own thing.
I love that so much. Well, I was so impressed by your content and I'm so impressed by you. Every conversation we've had, not only have I learned something, but I actually feel inspired. So let's take us
Thank you.
go through what your job actually is. When somebody decides to hire you, what's the impact that an organized home can have on a family and how it functions?
Mm. Yeah, so often people are coming to me with a specific feeling that they're looking to fix. So often someone's feeling overwhelmed or overstimulated, or their space is just not functioning the way they need it to. They're wasting time, they're losing things. Maybe they're picking fights with the people in their family because it's just like the stuff is just creating so much conflict. And so we're typically solving for something when we're entering into a space. And when we're getting started, we're kind of walking through those pain points. So I say like, hey, like walk me through what is the challenge point so I know what I'm solving for. And the common themes or the goals of this work is either to improve their connection with their family, so giving them more time, relieving the mental load. Maybe it's also like extending the shelf life of their things. So often when we're working with kids and within kids spaces, their kids have so much stuff, but yet they're bored and they don't play with any of those things. So getting creative about how we manage toys and the inventory can often extend the life of their items. Decision fatigue is another thing that we tackle,
Tell me
where,
about it.
walking into
Tell me about it.
walking.
Yes, like that's so relatable. What is decision fatigue? Walk us through it.
Yeah, so I mean, it could be in any space in your home, but basically you're just forced to make a bunch of tiny different decisions that eventually get to the point where you're like, I just have no more energy left. One a thing that just recently I heard that I've been using a lot when I'm speaking with clients is this concept of like leaky energy. So as moms,
Mm.
specifically from the moment we wake up, let's assume that our tank is full. We had a great sleep. All is wonderful. That's a really lovely assumption. But as soon as we wake up, we start to leak energy. Every question we get asked, everything that we need to solve for starts to kind of take away from our reserves. And my goal in the service that I provide is that the things you're leaking energy on are not actually the stuff. And so if you're asked as a mom, like, hey, do you know where that thing is, where my jersey is, where that colored t-shirt is I need for school? We're solving for kind of those tiny little leaks throughout the day by saying everything has its place and everything is in its place. So everyone can find what they need. You're kind of unloading from yourself and making everyone else be able to fall in line. And you'll find that like the mental clarity that comes along with that is huge. And often so much of the home is within either, it could be the mom, it could be any person who's in that role in the family, but there's usually one person who holds all the information and manages all the stuff. And so by implementing the systems, we're able to kind of solve for that.
So you're describing a world in which I do not live. Like I do not understand a world, and that idea of that leaky energy piece, I'm sure a lot of our listeners and mom and parent and caregiver followers will really resonate with that. I know personally I have a really hard time at transitional moments of my day, primarily like getting kids out the door, getting kids home from school. And I try to create all these organizational moments in my family. I even like did these special built-ins to give everyone a cubby. And retrospectively, I wish there was other things I would have done differently because they don't always land really well. But like I am
Mm.
struggling every single day to keep my kids' stuff organized. So if you're giving me some consultation, can you explain like what's the number one tip you would give a mom who's trying to deal with just getting out the door every day?
Right. I think the most important piece that I would start with is like walk me through which rooms you're using and which rooms you're walking through in that day and what elements are you pulling on. So for example, if you're starting in their room, you're waking them up, you're pulling out their clothes for the day. Let's talk about how much clothes they have in their dresser. Let's talk about the inventory levels that they have. Do they have too much? Is it easy to make a choice? Are you able to keep on top of laundry? Let's kind of like simplify their dresser and their choice so that that is an easy decision. And then what does our bathroom look like? If you're bringing them into the bathroom and they're brushing their teeth, is everything accessible for them? Is it something they can self-serve? Is it like total chaos and trying to find everyone's individual toothbrush? Can we solve for that and creating a home and a place for that? Then if you're moving into the kitchen, do you have a space designated where like they can self-serve their plate, their bowl? Is like, are we managing too many dishes? Does everything have a flow within the kitchen so that you can find what you're looking for to support your routine? And then the entryway or the mud room or whatever it is you call it in every home has such an impact. It's kind of where we enter into the space and we exit the space. Um,
Yes.
and it's something that we often need to zone in on. So for kids, I like to say like, yes, cubbies are great, accessible hooks where they can hang up their own stuff. Because if they're too high, they're throwing them on the floor and then you're inevitably coming around and picking them up.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible to assume that kids are going to line up their shoes nicely. So in dry season, I like to suggest like give everyone a bin. They put their shoes, their sandals, whatever running shoes they have. Everyone gets a bin. They just have to throw it in. That's it. There's not like tiny little lineups. So there's little solves throughout the day that we can kind of factor in who's using this space. Because when you look sometimes on, Instagram or some of these organization shows, which are wonderful, often people get hung up on like, there's no way I can maintain that. There's no way I can fold the clothes like that. There's no way my shoes are going to be lined up like that. And the way that I like to address it is like, how are we using this space in real life? What's going to work for your family, not just like make it look pretty. And let's start there. Does that
Wow.
make sense?
You already just explained and gave like little golden nuggets to me of things that I would never have even considered of the preamble or the cursors of my day that could
Mm,
impact how we get out the house. I do have some friends who are like unbelievably organized. Their houses are always pristine. And it seems like they just figured it out better, or maybe they were taught it or whatever. So I think you are really good, Britt, because you give people education of like it actually starts in so many different areas of your family home, especially when you're managing so many people. So when I think
Mhm.
about my kiddos getting dressed in the morning, they do have too many options. That's like the first thing that comes to mind. And if I feel that way, then I'm going to assume that most of our listeners feel that way. Um,
Yeah.
and the self-service of breakfast, mudroom redesign, like this is really your area of genius. So I love this so much. Tell us about when you come to somebody's home, and I'm thinking about myself included. Like I am constantly bottling the mess of my house. I look around my house, I see surfaces, the surfaces have stuff on it, and I want to pull my hair out. But I so feel helpless, Brittney. Tell us why we have an emotional reaction to physical space.
Mm. Yeah, so the best way that I can describe this, and we've talked about this before a little bit, but if we can think of everything that is in our home as creating noise. So if we're thinking about overstimulation in that sense of just like being irked, um, I want you to think of like everything that's on a surface, on the floor, on a counter, it's all creating some noise, some louder than others. And the more stuff we have out, the more stimulated we're becoming. And so the more that we can edit out and pare down our clutter, or even sometimes it's just getting it off of surfaces, getting it off of floors. So you may not have too much stuff, but it's just, it doesn't have a home. People don't know where to put it, or it's not an intuitive place to put it. And so it's just landing out. And all of that noise is overstimulating you. We take it off the surfaces, we create a home, a place for everything, everything in its place. And that noise gets dulled. We put it in a cupboard, we put it on a shelf in a basket. There's different tactics and ways that we can do that that work for different families, but that's generally kind of the best way I can describe why your stuff is triggering you so much.
Yeah, I can't even imagine like some of the things I tried to implement, and I have met many like different organizational professionals throughout my career, sort of in my personal brand building in this Instagram community through podcasting. But you have sort of this different, I think, skill set, which is so interesting, which is not just like function and form, but it's function, form, and sort of like a toolkit to do it
Mm,
yourself, which I love. I was going to move on a bit to another question, which is tell us about the shame and the embarrassment, discomfort, and attachment we have to the reluctance of purging our belongings.
mm,
I feel shame. I clean for the cleaning lady. When somebody comes to my house, first of all, the thing I do is I'm embarrassed and I apologize for the mess.
mhm,
I'm always feeling the only moments in which I'm feeling blissful is like the hour after my cleaning lady has left, and
mm.
or that I have spent like hours doing some corner of my house and feeling satisfaction. What's with the embarrassment and shame around our house?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much tied up in that, right? And we can call that back to childhood things, and I think a big piece is that like our home is a representation of us and everything we've built and everything we're working for, whether it's the people that's in it or the stuff that we've acquired, and we want that to reflect the best version of us into the people that love us or even the people who don't know us enough. But it's kind of that like first representation, judging the book by its cover type element. I think we also are just inundated with social media and representations of the fact that like we think everyone else has their stuff together. We think that their homes are all buttoned up. We think that there's homes out there that don't get messy like ours. We think there's people out there who manage most people out there manage their stuff better than us. And there's just like a lot of shoulding or comparison syndrome that gets pulled into this like just day and age of parenting. And that doesn't apply to just stuff, that applies to everything we do as parents. Um, and so I think it's very normal to try to say like you shouldn't feel embarrassed, you shouldn't feel shameful of your stuff. It's kind of redundant. We are ultimately going to feel that as humans. However, I think my job is to normalize what you're feeling, and my job is to help you understand that like you're in a phase of life likely where these things are just at the bottom of the list. There's so many other important things in your schedule, your routine. We want you to be giving more of your energy to your kids. We want you to be giving more of your energy to your partner, to building your career. And this is where you can call in the help. Like if you just can't do it, you don't have the bandwidth, this doesn't bring you joy, this isn't a release for you, because it is for some people. They, maybe that tidy friend of yours, like that's their way of just like feeling good. For me, if I'm angry, if I'm ticked off, if I'm anxious, I tidy. But that's not everyone's release. And so I think recognizing that, like, just like we hire out other services, you have a cleaner, all of these things, this is just an area that you can just call in the help and not feel bad about it.
I love that too. And I know you do it with a design lens in mind as well.
Mm,
Um, God, that makes so much sense. Yeah. When you're like taking it back to childhood, I'm like, I think you and I had a previous conversation about this, which I think is fascinating, which is like, I think we had talked about like why people put so much value on belongings. And you used to see
mhm,
these popular television shows, the hoarders, and then people like, oh, who are those two amazing people in your community? The Home Edit. Like people becoming
mhm.
obsessed with like, um, I don't know, it's reality TV, but it is interesting. It's a you know, peeking behind the kimono, so to speak, of how other people live and being either feeling less guilty for having a lot of stuff or having emotional reactions or putting too much value on, I don't know, this piece of paper that, somehow has so much meaning versus people
Yeah.
who now like yourself who come in and be like, less is more, and more is more. But what is sort of your key um principles if you were sort of gonna summarize like your brand, your look and feel, like what is the guiding light when you're making decisions on like, oh, is this coffee cup, do I really need to keep this item? Is it like because I
Mm,
have 12 coffee cups or because this coffee cup has my brand logo on it? What is it that
mm.
helps us make the decision, the Mary Kondo moment of, is this worth keeping?
Yeah, I think the most important part and what I spend so much time doing at the top of my work with clients is I just need to understand how you function in your space. And when you walk me through your morning routine, you would tell me I make coffee. Great. How do you make the coffee? Walk me through that. What do you typically pull for? What are you grabbing for out of your drawer or your cupboard? Often we have so much stuff and we pull for the same items over and over again. You have a closet full of jeans and you're pulling for the same jean or the same tight. So understanding how you live and how you function within your space is super important for me to be able to coach you through that. And then, there's a lot of different objections and feelings that come up in kind of the decluttering portion of the work. So some things that I like to say are, if we let go of this right now, would you rebuy it? If you lost it today, would you go out and rebuy it? And often that's a good opportunity for people to be like, I have it because I have it, or I spent money on it at some point. But like, if I lost it, if it broke, I probably wouldn't be going out to buy it again. So that's kind of a good gut check for people. And when I'm working with kids, I often use the same tactic and I say, like, if you had to spend your own allowance or your own money from your piggy bank on this item, if you lost it, would you? Is it that important to you? And that's a good way for them
Interesting.
to kind of understand, like, no, I wouldn't. But if like mom and dad are buying it for me, then like maybe. And so just understanding the importance that you place on it in that context is really helpful. Understanding the last time you used it. So saying like, when's the last time you used that coffee cup? Can you remember? Like,
Yeah.
did you use it because your dishwasher was full and it was your last choice? Or, kind of walk me through the last time. And a coffee cup's a little bit limited, but there's
Right.
different ways you could use that within your home.
Right.
Um, and there's different tips and tricks. Another one is like, someone's really attached to their coffee cup collection, for example. And I say, okay, cool. Well, you've got 3 cupboards full of coffee cups right now. I'm going to give you one shelf on one cupboard. So you can keep whatever cups or mugs you want, but it all has to fit on that one shelf. And then
Yeah.
that also helps them kind of create space around what they keep and what goes once they have kind of a limited space to work with. So there's lots of different ways to tackle the attachment piece, and working through those coaching elements, you're able to also, I can say like, oh, okay, now I'm understanding what's kind of triggering that emotion, or now I'm getting that. And then I can kind of work with the individual to see like, how far can we push this? There's sometimes when I'm like, you know what? we've got the space, we can store it effectively. I don't need to push you to edit these things out. It just depends on the circumstance as well.
Yeah, I love that. I think for me, my parents came from nothing and were so self-made that as they grew older, they just wanted stuff. And I grew up in a
Yes.
family where stuff was everywhere and everything had a story and everything had a value. And it was this, tchotchke or whatever, this lamp or this book. And my parents could tell you where they bought it, how much they paid, like everything. And
Mm-hmm.
now they're well into their 70s, but my husband and I are trying to build a family where we're not doing those things. And I'm trying to put like almost no emotional value on stuff.
Mm.
And sometimes it's really hard. And I find that people fall in love with things like a house is a perfect example. Like a house for me, is a business investment. I
Mm-hmm.
haven't fallen in love with a house. I've never felt like this emotional attachment to the house. But there are certain things I want to like go through everything. I don't want to like just swipe my hand into a garbage bag and toss it out. I want to go through each piece and decide. And that can be time consuming. And it's amazing how much, if you have lived in the same house for many years, what you can um what's it called? What's the
Accumulate.
word? Accumulate.
Accumulate.
Thank you. Yeah, accumulate. It's remarkable to me to see. And my parents are been in the same house now for like 50-ish years and are now like in their 70s for the first time purging, and it's been a year's process. But I'm feeling so
Mm-hmm.
proud of them because I think they had an aha moment being like they felt overwhelmed by their stuff. All their adult children had left the house, but I do see this like next gen, like Gen X, Gen Y, and now Gen Alpha, which is like our kids' generation, like they also put value on stuff, but it's interesting to see what they're willing to spend on. And I do think maybe it is this influence of social media and TikTok where like young kids who are tweens, 8, 9, 10, not only are they buying stuff at Sephora, they're coming home and they're organizing their shit.
Mm.
And they know where everything is and they're into sort of collecting. So I'm keen to see where this goes. I just want to ask a question from the audience, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
this season, this year, Brittnei, it's our first time doing this. It's our first question from the audience.
Love
We
it.
pulled 25,000 people. We had 5,000 people sort of see our post that you were coming on. And we had a few questions, but the best one that came in is from Carlene. No, I don't know how to say this name. Caryn. How would you say that? Karen. Is that Karen?
Karen? Karen, I think.
Karen L. wrote, I would love to hear from Brittnei some tips for kids who really struggle keeping spaces clean. I mean, if I could get an amen, amen. How can we get our kids who really struggle keeping spaces clean, talk to our kids, our grade school kids, our, let's say, kids in elementary school, even high schoolers and teenagers, that sort of that I always read that book to my kid, I love you forever, I like you for always. And they talk about
Mm.
that 9-year-old sort of walking through the house like a mess, the 16-year-old who's like, eating pizza and hanging upside down and like does not care about a stitch of stuff. How do we teach our
Yeah.
kids, I guess, at almost any age and stage, um, how to manage the struggle of keeping spaces clean? This is such a good question. Thank you, Karen. I'm sorry that
Yeah.
I totally butchered your name. Karen L. Go ahead.
It is a good question. And kids' spaces and working with family homes is my favorite. I think partly because it's the stage of life I'm in, but also because we have such an impact on that as parents. And to your point about growing up in a home with all that stuff, like we are the generation that grew up in those homes where we know the impact that that's having on us and what we're needing to heal is a strong word, but what we're needing to do differently, the cycles we need to break. So a couple of things that I like to think about when we're talking about this topic is we have so much control over what we let into our homes. So just like when we talk about, feeding strategies, we have so much control over what our kids have or offered, but we can't necessarily control what they eat. We have so much control of what comes into our home. And so starting there from the time that you are pregnant or you're bringing in the baby into your home for the first time, like start there, manage what you're registering for, really asking yourself, like, what do I need versus what I think I want or what the internet is telling me I need. And then continue to manage that as the kids grow older. So some tips I like to do about this is like gifting holidays. manage what your kids are getting. So providing suggestions to those who are gifting your kids that are gifts they will use, that you can continue to get life out of, that are maybe open-ended toys. And you can start to curb some of that like over gifting or just gifting of junk, which is inevitably stuff that you'll have to manage with them. So that's one of my favorite tips. The other piece is managing what you're saying yes to, and again, what's coming into the home. So I just actually shared this on my Instagram the other day, the tip that we use when we bring our kids out into the stores, and inevitably they want 15 things, and they're all at the dollar store, naturally, all junk, all stuff that's gonna just litter your space. One thing that we like to do is we prep our kids before they go into the store. Hey, we've got a list. You can help me build the list of what we need today. There's nothing else that's going to be purchased today coming home. And so if you see something you like, you can take a photo of it and we'll add it to your log. And we have a running log or album in our phones of photos of our kids holding up random things, often at the dollar store. And then we reference those later on when it comes to gifting holidays. We'll see what they remember, the things that they've thought about and asked about again. And then we suggest those out, and then we just delete the rest because a lot of it is forgotten. It's very like in the moment. That also inevitably teaches them impulsive buying isn't something that we do in our family. You know, we kind of help manage the way that they bring stuff in. When it's in the home, a couple things that I like to suggest is keeping bedrooms as bedrooms. So keeping it as stuffies, books, sleeping, clothes, that's it. That's all that's happening in bedrooms. And this isn't possible in every home because not every home has additional storage for toys or a playroom, and we can get creative with that. But if it's possible and functional for your family, keep bedrooms as sleeping rest zones only. Because what we often find is when they become dumping grounds for toys, that's where things get out of control because you don't go in there as often, you're not managing it as often, you care a little less because it's not in your purview, and then it's a lost cause. So managing the type of inventory and where it is in your home is helpful. A place for everything and everything in its place. So you've heard me say that a couple of times, but we should have enough stuff that we can create a home and a place for everything. We're not shoving things in crevices. We're not dumping things wherever we can find them in a corner in the top of a closet. We should pare down our inventory enough so that everything has a place. And we help the kids understand what that place means and how they can use it. Bringing them as part of the process for resets or tidies can be painful in the moment, but I really like to suggest we include them. I often do. I had a really awesome session before the holidays with a family of 2 kids, and they took the day off school, played hooky, and we decluttered their entire living space and toy space together. It does make my job a little harder. I have to get a bit creative, but ultimately where we ended was, I think we had 8 donation bags and 6 garbage bags of stuff. All that if I had just asked the mom, she would have been like, I don't know, I feel bad, I'm not sure. But involving the kids in the process gives them a lot of control and also helps them understand that transformation of like less from more to less feels really good, and they want to maintain that. And then the other thing that we hear all the time, and sometimes it can trigger people, is toy rotations. Or stuff rotations. So if your kids are out of the little toy stage,
Brittney, you just froze on me, honey. Brittney, you just froze. I can't hear you. Oh, I just lost her.
Sorry. Are you live?
No.
Okay, good.
Hey, I just lost you. That was so weird.
Weird. My
Yeah.
speed is good. I'm not sure.
Okay, just go. You were talking about toy rotation.
Mm.
Continue. Go ahead.
Okay, so toy rotation is something that can trigger folks either because they don't want to manage it, they don't have the space to store things that are out of rotation. But this can be a really great way to extend the life of your toys or your whatever it is that they're interested in at the time, and also limit the amount of tidy and work and maintenance that is required. And so if you're finding your kid is just really messy, well, that also might just be a characteristic of them or a stage of life. However, if they have less stuff out, the chaos can be tamed, if you will. And then the other piece is modeling. So if you're finding your kids are at a stage where, they're really resistant to wanting to let go of items, or, everything feels really important to them, then you model, hey, I'm going to go through my closet and I'm going to take some things out that no longer fit my body, feel good in my body, that I no longer wear. Hey, I'm going to go through the kitchen and we're just going to like pare it down so it's easier for us to find what we're looking for when we're cooking. And soon, I think they will feel and see the momentum that's building in the home, and they'll want to do the same for theirs. And then the last tip I like to give is the 1 in, 1 out rule. So anytime something new comes into the home, whether it's a gifting holiday or they've purchased it themselves or you've purchased it for them, something has to go. So whether it's when you're talking about your kids having too much clothes, if you bring home 2 t-shirts have to come out. If you bring home a new truck, 1 truck has to go out. I like to try to keep it in the same type of inventory type so that you can kind of manage things that way. But that's a great way to work with kids. And when they're editing something out, they can also try to sell it on Marketplace. You can keep a box for a yard sale. You can get creative, and then they can earn themselves their own money to then buy outside of gifting holidays. So there's lots of different ways you can tackle this. I feel like I just gave a lot there. So
No,
hopefully
I
it was
mean, it's
digestible.
so valuable. I mean, the valuable lessons, and that I've heard tidbits of some of this sort of guiding principles before, but I've never heard it sort of in a synopsis of how to actually teach your own children about clutter and how to be less messy, and how to organize their own spaces. So I've heard some of those strategies before, just never in response to this sort of question. And I think it's such a good reminder. Now, when somebody hires you, Brittnei, is this something that you like coach them on a very bespoke basis? Because I know for me myself, like I try to employ some of these things, and sometimes I'm on it and sometimes the wheels fall off. I'm often taking photos of my kiddos in the dollar store, exact same strategy. It's one of my go-tos. I think I shared it a few months ago on Instagram, and people are losing their minds and being like, that was so good. I'm like, I don't even know where I heard that before, but maybe it was you.
We've all heard it somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that one. And I think, there are some of these like tidbits that are super important. But when somebody hires you, what is like that VIP experience? Like I'm all about outsourcing. I outsource my accounting, my bookkeeping, my cleaning. There's just other people who are better at stuff than I am, and it gives me space to tackle what I need to do in a day. For someone like you, when you become the professional that, I don't know, white knight somebody's life, because that's what this feels like. What is it you're giving them? Why the VIP experience? Why the professional help? Because obviously this stuff that you're offering is golden, and maybe this is like 1% of what you know, which I strongly believe it probably is. But why would somebody hire you?
Yeah, I think what we often hear is that common objection of like, I should be able to do it themselves. And I just want to remind, like, this whole conversation is about like a lot of this we weren't taught, right? We're teaching it to our kids, we're teaching it to ourselves, but often people are coming to me and they want it all taken care of, but they do want to be involved, and they want to be involved because they want to be involved in the conversations that are the things that are coming out of the home. So typically our service includes we do a consult, we kick off, and that's where I ask all the questions. I really get to know the pain points and the goals for the service. And then I create an action plan. So you send me photos and videos, or I come to your home. It all depends on the circumstance. And we understand what the goal is for the time in home. Then we move to the in-home service portion, where typically the beginning of the portion is time where I spend with the family or a specific client. And that's where we declutter. In 80% of our homes, I'll say, we need to do this element. And that is the one-to-one. I'm working with you, I'm coaching you, I'm understanding how you work in the space. We edit out things, donate, rehome, maybe it's to a neighbor, a cousin, a friend, or throw out. And then once that decluttering is done, the client can kind of retreat, do whatever they want to do, leave me in their home, whatever. And that's where I work my magic, and I say, okay, I know how the family functions. I know how this needs to work for them. We now have a reasonable amount of inventory to work with. And then I put in the systems, the place for everything and everything in its place. And everything's labeled. It's very intuitive. They come home, I give them a tour of their new space so they can find everything when I'm gone. And then our packages can include a maintenance piece where I come back in 6 months and I just reset it. So these systems are meant to be easily maintained by everyone, by factoring in, again, how everyone uses their space. But we're all humans and things get discombobulated as life goes on. And so just having that opportunity within the first year to kind of come back and reset to what we had originally thought is just kind of a really nice touch that we offer our clients so that they feel like it's not like one and it has to last for the rest of their existence. And then we haul away the recycling, the donations, the garbage, so that it's not sitting in your trunk and you're not driving around with it for months to come. It's literally like one day of service, we're out and your space is reset.
I mean, I think that last one for me is probably, over the course of my married life, at least, we've been really good at taking moments, decluttering, moving stuff to a space, but then getting that stuff to the next level, the donation bin, the got junk, the
Yes.
whatever. Like my garage right now probably has 1/8 of it sitting with stuff that needs to go. And we're just like looking at it, driving over it, like it's blocking my ability to open my door. I'm like, what am I doing with
Yeah.
this stuff? We just haven't had a chance to take it to the next level. So I think, you're offering a luxury service as far as I'm concerned.
Mhm.
But for me, the luxury comes with a solution to so many problems in people's lives on a daily basis. And for me, it's not just the decluttering, it's the systems. And I know you sort of keep
Mm.
talking about systems. When you refer to a system as a professional declutter organizer and designer, what does a system mean to you?
Yeah, so it depends on the space. So in a pantry, it would be taking a lot of our bulk items out of their original packaging and into a clear, easily accessible, easy to spot container that you then just refill, so that you create some uniformity within your space. It's quick, everyone can see it, and what you're not working with odd shapes. So often we go for a Costco run and we're trying to fit these massive packages and boxes within our pantry, and it's just total chaos. And then someone comes and pulls it out and they've got a cracker box and they open it and then they don't close it and that whole cracker box is wasted. So, the chaos continues to unfold. When we take things out of their original packaging, we put them into specific bins and containers, sealed, all of that jazz. We create a system that everyone can follow. It's easy for you to maintain. You come home from Costco, you dump it in the bin, you put it back in the drawer, and the uniformity lives on past just that one shop. That one day you're like, I'm going to tidy the pantry and all these boxes are going to fit like Tetris and it looks beautiful. And it solves for kind of the life after that. If that makes sense. That's just one example.
So the system itself is the tools and strategies you're employing per area, per solution to have, I guess, the accessibility or
The function.
tools, like it's
Yeah.
literally function and form. Yeah, I love
Yeah,
that.
you're wanting to solve for like visibility. You're wanting to solve for use cases. So, when you have bins in front of bins and you're reaching behind, ultimately whatever you just put, it might look pretty right now, but it's not going to ever be reset like that. So you're wanting to think about how things are being used, and creating something that is foolproof, I guess, is the example. So in a vanity, I like to do, like, you see those drawer organizers. And so like when you're opening up your vanity for the first time, you have to I just did this where we're talking about that leaky energy. Think of all the energy you're leaking when you're trying to get ready in the morning, and your vanity, you're like, God, I can't find my foundation or my powder or my mascara or my highlighter, whatever those things are. But when you put those drawer organizers in place, every type has its home, and you're pulling in the same spot every day, and you're no longer leaking that energy, because the systems are working for you. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. I love the idea of like, I think I saw once, I don't know if it was actually my mom who taught me. My mom is actually extremely organized and very diligent. She grew up in a house that didn't have a lot, like had nothing, like extreme levels of poverty.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, they didn't have a lot. So everything they had, they cherished. And my mother very much is still like that. And her like
Right.
desk is beautiful, organized. And I find that I model my cosmetics and desk. I try to keep it so organized, and I try to make sure that everyone has their own house. And I love the idea. And I think it was I don't, maybe it was you or her. I can't remember. It's either you or my mom. I'm getting confused. But the idea is you pick it up and you move it once. Like you pick it up and you put it right back down. Like there's no place to really get it lost or disorganized. So
Right.
I really appreciate that. That's so, okay. So that's what you mean by a system. I just want to be very clear for people who don't
Yeah, fair enough.
perhaps understand the
Might
language.
be jargon, I guess.
Well, there is some jargon, right? And I just find that we try to talk to the lowest common denominator, because you just never
Yeah.
know who's listening and what they might pick up and might
Fair
not. But
enough.
this is just, you're a wealth of knowledge. Talk to me about maternal mental health. Obviously, we talked a bit about seniors, we talked about kids. Talk about moms. Let's talk about their mental health and their connection. How can you solve some maternal mental health issues?
Yeah, I think that like well-being element of whether you identify as a very organized person or not, our space impacts our well-being. Like whether you can pinpoint it, whether you would put it in your personal bio or not, there's no denying that our environment impacts us. And I think there's so often we discredit kind of the mental load, and this is part of our rhetoric now, but the mental load of managing the stuff and the inventory. And so that's what I love working with moms to do, just that. I love working with partners who want to support their partners in that journey. Part of it is, like I said, implementing things that everyone can follow. So we're taking things off of the mental load, normalizing and removing the shame and embarrassment from moms who think they should be able to do this. They should be able to mom and work and keep an orderly, tidy, Instagram worthy home. So normalizing some of that element, normalizing asking for help and getting in the help, I think is really important. And just helping people understand that she's not just like a ragey witch. Like she doesn't want to feel like this. She doesn't want to act like this. But all of the stuff on the surfaces and on the counters is so loud, and it's so loud in our brains, and it's leaking energy from us. And by tackling those things such a manageable way to support our mental health and our well-being. And it's not a nice to have. It's not like you see those memes where it's like the woman cleaning the baseboard before the guests come over, and we all laugh. But like, what if we all just took responsibility for the impact that our space has on everyone in the family, and everyone contributed to support that? Does that make sense?
It makes so much sense. I feel impacted by my baseboards. I'm not gonna lie. I was in my basement yesterday. I was in my basement recently, and I took a look at like the trim leaning up my stairs, and I wiped it down. I was like, no one wipes, like I'm wiping this down for myself. And I'm trying really hard to like find each corner of my house and be super content with what we have, but also like not want a bigger space, maybe have less stuff, but be a little bit more strategic with what we have and how we use it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
To me,
also think
it's
it's
a
so
new.
much. Sorry. I think it's
No,
so
no, go
much on
ahead. It's just a
us
new. It's
as
a new. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so much on us as moms as well. Like when I talk about like you have control over what comes into your home. Well, guess who's calling the mom when it's a birthday or a Christmas? Like grandparents are calling you to ask you what should be coming in, what should be gifted. Um, you know, so I think we just carry the weight of that, like in a unique way, where we're looking around and we're like, okay, well, she just told me I have control over what's in my home. So like I did this is my fault. And I think that's where we want to release that and get the support, get the help, get the tactics in place so that some of that is a little bit more manageable.
I love that so much. We're coming to the top of our podcast, and I've learned so much, Brittnei. It's been like a refresh, but also some new strategies. I think you are so wonderful. I'm so excited for our community to continue to get to know you, and for us to sort of spread the gospel of who you are and what you do. I know you have a free decluttering guide. How can we get that?
Yeah, so this is where I like to kind of, if someone's hearing this for the first time, or the thought of having someone enter into their home feels a little daunting, the first thing I try to say is just start small. Just start somewhere. Start in a cupboard, a shelf, a closet, a box. just start somewhere and stop waiting on motivation and start building momentum with each box or shelf you tackle. And the greatest tool that I can offer is our free decluttering checklist. So it kind of just takes the guesswork, relieves kind of those mental or the decision fatigue we talked about a little bit, and just goes space by space, inventory by inventory, and just suggests, hey, here's how you could look at the inventory. Based on this checklist, is there anything that can be taken off or taken out or edited out? And so that I can send you the link, and you can include it maybe in the show notes where we can collect that. It
100%.
also lives on our
Yes.
website.
Awesome. I love that so much. You gave so much information today, and I think like the amount of gems that have been dropped for me and our listeners is remarkable. I think again to our listeners for taking pride as a co-pilot and asking some really awesome questions. If there's one piece of information, if people hear nothing else today, what's like the one message you want people to remember about you or some of the strategies you've employed?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I can think of is that start small element. I think it's a really daunting task to manage everything in our home. And if you can just pick one shelf, one cupboard, one closet to tackle, and then just really check in and see how that's feeling for you. Does it add more function? Did it release something off your mental load? Does it feel better to use that space or to pull on that inventory? And then you'll see that it's easy to kind of tackle that piece by piece, element by element, and just don't look at it as a whole, because I think that can be really exhausting and just add to our mental load or our feelings of shame or embarrassment. So start small.
Oh, Brittnei, thank you so much for being with us today. I have learned so much again. What an amazing recap. I think you are so phenomenal, and I cannot wait for a few more moments where you're going to be seeing us. Brittney's doing an Instagram live with us next month. This month, February. She'll be in our newsletter in May, and the podcast will be released hopefully soon. In the next few weeks, at least. We were aiming for March, but it might be sooner. She has some Instagram takeovers over at the Mom Halo in April and September. And we cannot wait for you to just keep seeing this amazing, amazing, talented, beautiful face. So the company is Well Nested Living, and you can check out her website, wellnestedliving.ca. I believe the social is also Well Nested Living. Am I correct?
It is. It's well.nested.living.
I love that so much. Brittney, you are a doll. We cannot wait to have you again and again. Thank you so much. And we are super excited for this 2024 Scholar. Let's give Brittney a huge round of applause. Thank you, Brittney. Woo!
Woohoo, thank you.
All right. Until next time. Bye, everybody. Thanks for listening. Mwah.